Today's discussion is not about geopolitics in the conventional sense. It is not merely about Iran or the Middle East or any single nation. What we are about to examine runs deeper. This is an inquiry into the architecture of power and the hidden mechanics of human fear. Because wars do not begin where we think they do. They do not begin with missiles, borders, or treaties. They begin in the human mind. We often describe war as a conflict between states, but that is only the surface. At its core, war is the process by which fear is organized, justified, and ultimately transformed into action. And at this point, an ancient insight becomes surprisingly relevant. A Tibetan text, often translated as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, offers a striking observation. The greater the fear, the stronger the attachment to illusion. This is not merely religious language. It is a psychological principle. When uncertainty rises, human beings do not move toward truth. They move toward certainty, even if that certainty is false. Now apply this to politics. An insecure regime produces stronger ideology. An anxious leader demands deeper loyalty. A fearful population chooses obedience over doubt. This is not simply politics. It is fear structured. So we must ask a difficult question. Why do people continue down a path they know is dangerous? Why do leaders remain silent when they understand the consequences? Why do societies sustain systems that harm them? The answer is not ignorance. It is psychological cost. Consider the decision-making process of those in power. First, they know. They see economic decline, policy failure, public suffering. Second, they hesitate because truth carries risk, while silence offers temporary safety. And so they say, not yet. The timing is not right. But in reality, this is not delay. It is the beginning of permanent silence. Then comes the transformation. Silence becomes alignment. Alignment becomes belief. At that moment, individuals are no longer passive observers. They become participants in the system they once questioned. Now here is the uncomfortable truth. The most dangerous individuals are not extremists. Extremists are predictable. The truly dangerous are those who recognize the truth and choose silence. Because systems do not collapse when enemies grow stronger. They collapse when truth disappears. History shows us something unsettling. Authoritarian systems are rarely built by a single tyrant. They are constructed gradually through layers of compromise, silence, and rationalization. Let us return to the earlier insight. The mind, even after death, continues to choose its direction. If we translate this into political psychology, it suggests something profound. Human beings are not driven solely by survival. They are driven by meaning. So the central question shifts, not will we survive, but what will this mean? And here, hardliners emerge. They are not simply more aggressive individuals. They are structurally optimized actors. In systems driven by fear, moderation appears as weakness. Compromise appears as betrayal. And escalation becomes the only stable strategy. This is how systems converge. Power demands loyalty. Groups become polarized. Ideology justifies sacrifice. And when these forces align, moderates disappear. Now let us consider a concrete example. Why would a state consider a strategy like closing a critical global choke point, such as the Strait of Hormuz, despite the obvious risks? From the outside, it appears irrational. Economic collapse, military retaliation, global instability. The consequences are clear. And yet, such strategies gain support. Why? Because they neutralize defeat. In strategic terms, this is asymmetrical conflict. If you cannot win the game, you change the game itself. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a geographic location. It is a leverage point in the global energy system. By threatening it, a weaker actor amplifies its impact. It transforms vulnerability into systemic risk. Game theory clarifies this dynamic. If cooperation leads to slow internal collapse and confrontation leads to mutual damage, then under certain conditions, Mutual damage becomes the rational choice, because absolute defeat is no longer acceptable. In political psychology, this is known as the externalization of fear. The question shifts from, can we survive? To, can the world absorb the consequences if we don't? Fear is no longer internal. It is projected outward. At the group level, another mechanism emerges. Cohesion increases at the edge of crisis. Moderates are filtered out. Only those willing to escalate remain. At that point, retreat is no longer an option. And in the realm of belief, particularly religious or ideological systems, conflict is reframed, not as strategy, but as destiny, not as risk, but as purpose. So we arrive at a paradox. What appears suicidal from the outside can appear rational from within, because it achieves four things. It rejects defeat. It imposes cost on the opponent. It validates belief, and it secures historical meaning. This leads us to a broader principle. When weaker actors cannot win, they redefine the rules. And in that process, the most dangerous choices become the most rational ones. Finally, we must confront one last question. Why do even the most powerful nations struggle to fully eliminate such systems? Again, the answer is psychological. Attachment to total victory can produce unintended consequences. Escalation, instability, endless conflict. Complete resolution becomes impossible. What remains is management. So this is not just a story about one country. It is about a structure, a recurring loop in human history. If we fail to understand it, we do not escape it. We repeat it. In the next lecture, we will go further. Why is it that even when military victory is possible, conflicts are rarely brought to a definitive end? Why does war shift from elimination to containment? If this analysis has value to you, consider subscribing and share, because understanding these patterns is the first step to breaking them.